All right, we are now live. Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Maddie Clarkson, and I am the Communications and Project Manager at the Stigma-Free Society. And I'm happy to be here today interviewing Jake Anthony, who is the Program Ambassador for Autism BC and is also a mental health advocate. He's served on many boards and committees and done so much advocacy work. And so we're just super excited to have you on the show today, Jake.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. I'm glad to be here, and it's stigma-free. I've known a bit about your organization prior to my job with Autism BC, and I really appreciate the work that your organization does, and I'm really happy to be able to speak with you today, and also to all the folks on Facebook right now who are watching. So
awesome. Yeah, we're so happy that you're here.
thank you.
Yeah. So I'd like to start off by just asking you about your mental health advocacy work and like your personal connection to autism spectrum disorder.
Sure, yeah. Well, I was actually diagnosed with high functioning autism, specifically Asperger's syndrome, when I was 4. So I was very lucky in terms of that, I was diagnosed young, so that I was able to, get a lot of help and when I was quite young. And so I remember because we had moved, my family and I had just moved from Ottawa, Ontario to here, and I was at a daycare center. And one of the instructors was very sure because she had just been to a conference on autism that I believe was being held by Autism BC.
Cool.
And she said, to my mother, she said, Jake, or Susan, I really think that Jake could be, a poster boy for somebody with autism because, from what I've just seen, because I was I very much kept to myself. I didn't play with the other kids. I definitely identified more with the staff, with the adults there. And I was just very socially withdrawn. So, I mean, I wasn't able to look people in the eye when I spoke to them. I wasn't able to be able to have a reciprocal conversation where it was, a give and take conversation and not just a one-sided ramble, right? So, and I remember that, yeah, so that was, I don't remember too much about that time because I was pretty young, but
Right.
that was when I was first diagnosed and when my journey with autism began. I also have clinical depression as well as an anxiety disorder, which is sometimes not all people with autism have it, but I know that there are definitely some where that's kind of part and parcel with having it. But it's something that thankfully I have a lot of great support, especially in times right now where things are we live in a pretty uncertain anxiety-provoking world. So I'm lucky to have the people that I have around me, and also to have a lot of professional help as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, so you were diagnosed quite young, which is good. I guess that's good because
Oh yeah.
you knew kind of what was happening. Like, did you feel that was helpful when you were diagnosed young?
Absolutely, because that way, it's much more difficult when a person is diagnosed when they're a teenager or an adult because they've gone through half their life or a big chunk of their life at that point, not knowing why do I have these challenges and why am I having, these difficulties, and also then people around them don't understand. So,
Right.
so they can't get help, and you don't have, and people don't have the because they don't know that that what you're dealing with just as much as you don't know what you're dealing with. They're not able to empathize and to be understanding and accepting and supportive, and they might just think that it's somebody who has a behavioral problem, right? Instead of, so no, I think it's really important, if you're lucky enough to be diagnosed young to start that journey at that point of not only educating yourself and making sure that and the family members educating themselves, but also educating people in the school systems, and if you yeah
Totally.
yeah
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah. That's really cool how you have a very positive attitude about it, and it seems like you've accomplished so much, and your mental health advocacy work is so inspiring. And I'd really like to hear more about this mental health advocacy, because I know you've been doing it for a really long time, and like what inspired you to start being an advocate, and just like your journey with that.
Well, I mean, at the time when I was diagnosed, here's the one was the one downside about being diagnosed about at the time that I was in 1996 is you have to remember at that point, places like Woodlands were still open. There were not a whole lot of supports for people on the spectrum or people with any kind of developmental challenges. I mean, so the next year after I was diagnosed, I mean, I went right into kindergarten. And I can tell you that, they had, at that point, there was no such thing as educational assistance. There was no such thing as IEPs, so individual education plans. That was not on anybody's radar. And inclusive education at that point was not something that I don't think any programs or degrees were offered to educators to be able to know how to properly teach and support individuals, whether they be on the spectrum or whether they have another diverse ability. So the first couple of years of elementary school was pretty much sink or swim. I was pretty much, the teachers were like, well, if he can follow along, he can follow along, but, and I'll pass him off to the next teacher and hope that they can, do more with him than I could. So it was people like my mother in particular, who was a amazing advocate, and who really helped me find my voice as an advocate. And so many other parents and individuals that I grew up around, and that I eventually did advocacy work with, who really blazed the trail for people like me and for people like, well, so many others who are, advocates today, to make sure that, not just in inclusive education, but in terms of all areas, that we have the supports that we have now. And, so obviously I grew up around that. Around people who were dedicated to a more inclusive society and more, more inclusive education and equality in the workplace, and people being able to choose, where they lived, what, and it just, so that was something that really, I think that's where kind of the spark was lit, I guess you could say, for for me as an advocate. And one thing that I see my autism in a way as being kind of something that is a good contributor to my advocacy work, because I'm able to, I have insight that, people off the spectrum may not have. And the same thing with my mental health challenges, right? It kind of, you can read a lot of books about the, about autism or about depression or about, but, and work with a lot of individuals or know individuals, be, like a family member of somebody who has it, but you don't you don't have that that lived perspective. And I think that, if people, all of us that do have that lived perspective, that we do have a certain, not maybe to the extent that I've done, but to a certain extent, that we have a responsibility to, to share that with other people who don't have that lived perspective, because a big part of, we can't move forward and really change things, right? And really, if people don't understand what people deal with on a day-to-day basis and what their experiences are, they're never going to understand, and we're never going to be able to work together to move forward, right? So yeah, so that's how I started with advocacy, is really just because, I had so many people advocating for me, advocating for so many people around me who, who today, some of them are advocates, or some of them, are really benefited because of people like my mother and other people like, yeah. And actually, my mother was one of the founding family members of Community Living BC, and was a frontline disability resources and welfare worker. So, I mean, she really, inspired me to be an advocate, not only for myself, but for other people, and to take advantage of, the voice that I have, because there's some people with autism who, even though they have they're able to, what they want to express everything that I'm saying, and they have it up here, but they just don't have the ability to verbalize it. And I'm very lucky that I have that ability to verbalize how I feel, what I experience, and So I hope that answers your the first part of the question, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's so great. Yeah, it's awesome how you just talk about the support that you had, like even if at the beginning in schools there wasn't anything in place for inclusion and for those living with diverse abilities, but you had that support system around you, and it's all, like, shout out to your mom for like giving you that voice and helping you, and also being an advocate. I think that's super cool, and I really believe that. And also, like, at Stigma-Free Society, like when there's stigma around all the diverse abilities, right? And the first step to kind of eliminating that stigma is talking about it, is sharing your story. It's educating others so that they can understand better, because once they understand, then they can be more accepting. So that's really cool.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're using the term diverse abilities. I heard you use that as well.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you? Like, why do you use diverse abilities? And what does that mean to you personally?
Well, diverse abilities is because, see, when people hear the word disability, they immediately think of everything that a person can't do.
Exactly.
That they're disabled, that, that they can't do this, they can't do that. So it starts off, it's referring to a person really in kind of a negative sense. I don't find it to be, I still use the word disability sometimes, and I don't consider it to be politically incorrect, and I don't consider it to be offensive. But I do believe that diverse ability is a much more positive word, because, the fact is, people ask me all the time, Jake, do you think that because you have autism or because you have mental health challenges, do you think that you have it more challenging or more difficult life than anybody else, or somebody who's neurotypical, right? And a big thing that I say is that, well, no, because we all have challenges, right? We all have things that we deal with on a daily basis. This just happens to be my challenge, right? So and I think that a big part of what I've tried to do as an advocate is to get people to appreciate and to focus on people's abilities instead of their disabilities.
I love that.
And what they can offer, and what they, the good, amazing things that they are able to do. So with diverse abilities, it's taking a negative and making it into a positive, is kind of I guess a short answer, as far as that goes. But it's really, because it's saying that, hey, and the thing is, just like we have different challenges, we also have different abilities. And one thing that I would like to say, though, because some people think that, especially with autism, that, oh, well, people with autism, they're good at one thing, but then, that's all they're, like the savant way of thinking, right? That, that means they can do one thing right. And it's like, well, no, we're capable of doing many amazing things and having a lot of really amazing skills. But, people just need to focus on that more than focusing on what we can't do and limitations, and because that's really how we end up, not being able to move forward as a society in terms of inclusion, because people just focus on, they're never going to belong, and they're never going to be able to contribute. And unfortunately, that negative kind of message, I think, is what's kind of held us back in a lot of ways from having a more inclusive community. So,
yeah, it's very limiting, focusing on what people can't do, that limits them instead of lifts them up and helps them. So I think that's really cool. And I actually learned the term diverse abilities from Autism BC. It was in an article, and I was really grateful for that term, because I'd actually been searching for a long time for an alternative term to disability, because I just didn't like saying it for the same reason. I felt that it focused on the negative aspect. So yeah, I think it's great. It makes more sense.
It does. Yeah.
And I was going to ask you about, some challenges that you have faced living with, like, on the autism spectrum. But I actually think it's also cool to talk about, you mentioned that, you feel that you have certain strengths, and that are like a part of being on the autism spectrum. Could you elaborate that a bit? Like what certain things that you feel are strengths or strengths of certain people, instead of talking about, like, oh yeah, again, like what you feel like is really challenging. So what are some strengths that that people on the autism spectrum have? Of course, it's a spectrum, and so everyone experiences
different for everybody. Yeah,
it's different for everybody. But for you, what are some strengths?
Well, I think one thing is that obviously I have a very one thing that's really helped me, especially when I'm working with various different organizations, is that I have a very good memory in terms of facts and in terms of and one thing that helped me in my previous career, where you had to learn a huge amount of text in a very short amount of time, is kind of having this almost photographic memory. And a lot of people on the spectrum have that, where they can just where they can kind of the brain's almost like a sponge, where it soaks up a great deal of information and a great deal of kind of experience. And so that's something that's really that's helped me, is that that I've had this ability to learn quickly. I think it's important, as an advocate, because you talk with so many people, and like you said, no one person is alike, and you can't, it's especially with autism. I mean, because the spectrum is so wide.
Yeah.
Right. So, to be able to have that ability to remember this person's experience versus that person's experience, right, and to be able to have that ability of recall, I think is really important. And another thing, a skill that I think I have that as an individual on the spectrum, is that I have a how do I put this? Like I said, I really think it has to do with having that lived experience, so that when I talk about autism, I'm not talking about it from an academic perspective or from the perspective of and I'm not saying that that academics and family members, that they don't have a strong perspective on what an individual with autism, what they deal with. But I really do believe that people with a lived experience, it's they are able to really give a complete solid understand and explanation, really, around what they experience and what autism is, because when you live it, and when you it's a part of your everyday life, then I mean, I just don't think that you can get a much better kind of account of what it's like to live with autism than if you have it. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I think that's so important, is having the people with lived experience, being those advocates, and being relatable for other people who have like similar lived experience, right? People, people can look up to you and say, wow, like, look at all this advocacy, look at all these accomplishments, and it can encourage them to be like, I can do that too. And so I think that's so important. And yes, of course, like other perspectives, like from academics and parents, those are also very important to contribute to that. But yeah, very, very cool. I love that. So yeah, you mentioned your previous career, because right now you're the program ambassador for Autism BC, and I'd like to hear more about that too. But I'd love to hear about your previous career and kind of how you ended up where you are now.
Well, in my previous career, I was actually a professional actor in theater for 15 years. So I apologize if anybody's speakers are blowing out right now. I have a very loud voice. I am stage trained, and that's definitely helped. Well, certainly as an advocate, it's helped me in terms of public speaking, because I don't have a fear of speaking in front of crowds, and if there's not a microphone around, I can be heard for the most part. So
right, yeah, it's awesome.
And a big part of actually how I started with acting was that acting was actually a life skills tool, because my mother had heard from that acting was a really great way to get me into an acting class. Would be a really great way for me to be able to learn how to connect with other people in a way that, like I said, where it's a reciprocal conversation and where you're actually able to keep eye contact with people. Because acting really demands that you have that ability to give and to receive and to act and react. And that's something that, and also, I mean, really, acting is the study of human emotion. So, and as a person, when I was younger, like after I was first diagnosed, I mean, there'd be times where I would be on a bus, for instance, and I might be talking about something or behaving in a way that would make somebody feel really uncomfortable or upset. And I wouldn't be able to read their body language. I couldn't tell that I was upsetting them, or that they were, because I couldn't pick up on the social cues and on their emotions. And so when you have a craft where you really study human emotions, so that then you can bring that, the truth that you find in the real world, and then bringing that to life through your character on stage, right? That's really something that, so acting was really originally something that was a life skills tool that wasn't meant to necessarily be a 15-year career.
Right.
But,
yeah.
It ended up becoming something that I both love to do, and that really helped me, I think, as a person, and definitely as an advocate. So
that is super cool. I just think that's so interesting, and very, very good to know, for other families with children on the autism spectrum, that, acting is something fun also that, people can do to help, develop those skills. I think that's just so cool.
Well, and I was lucky enough that for 6 years with City of Burnaby Parks and Recreation, I taught here in Burnaby. I taught Burnaby's only fully inclusive theater class for people of all abilities. So I had a lot of students who are on the autism spectrum, or who had different diverse abilities, and it was just so great to be able to watch them grow,
Wow.
because some of them would come into the class and they'd kind of sit off on their own, right? And they wouldn't really take part in the theater games or whatever. But then over time, I started seeing these connections growing, right? And these relationships building, and people becoming more and more comfortable with just having a good time with other people, and having that connection with other people, right? And it was something that was really rewarding to see, that progress over time. Yeah.
Yeah, like that is true inclusion. That is so cool, really focusing on the abilities that people can do, and instead of focusing and limiting people. Yeah, so great. So after your career in acting, so now you're program ambassador for Autism BC. So what was that transition? And now what is your job? Like, what do you do for Autism BC? Like, what does your job entail, and all that good stuff?
Well, I ended up kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. Obviously, the acting industry shut down. And I kind of, because I had grown up around, and I, so many people who were so active as advocates and everything, I kind of looked at my life, and I'd never been fully happy with acting. I had always enjoyed it.
Right.
But there was always a kind of dissatisfaction, and I didn't know if that was, that if I was overly ambitious and I just wasn't happy with what I had so far career-wise. Right. But then I looked at the work that I do as an advocate, and I said, you know what, this means a whole lot more to me than acting, and that when I do this work, I really feel like fulfilled, because of the fact that I'm not just doing something that feeds me and my passion and my love and everything, but this is something that's that really allows me to make a difference in the world for other people, instead of just for my own benefit, right? So Autism BC, I mean, kind of how I first got involved with them was I'm a member of the Autism Canada ASD National Advisory Committee, and basically this kind of leads into my relationship with Autism BC. So what happened is that the committee, whenever they have a conference in different parts of Canada, they have members from the committee who are from that part of the province form a conference planning committee. So I was on that committee, and because, of course, it was being held in BC, the partners who were working with Autism Canada were Autism BC and the Pacific Autism Family Network.
Right, yeah.
So that was my first kind of working with them to help plan the 2017 Vancouver Awesome Conference, and I was one of the conference presenters as well at the.
Ooh.
Yeah, and Bex Brocken, who was on the Autism BC team at that time, had seen me there and had heard about my background as an advocate and in theater and all of that, and So the next year, when they were doing the inaugural BC Autism Awards, they came to Bex called me and said, would you like to get together and talk about, hosting the awards? So I ended up hosting it, the first year, and then I hosted it last year, and and so that was kind of my introduction to Autism BC. I mean, I knew of their work before, and I knew of them as an organization, but that was my first time collaborating with them, right? So.
Awesome.
And then I ended up in summer of 2018. Dr. Temple Grandin was a guest of Autism BC, and came to Vancouver to do a lecture at the Agrodale. And I was lucky enough to be the keynote speaker to introduce her, and getting to have lunch with her before she went and gave the lecture that night. And I mean, that was really special because for me, as a person on the spectrum, I think anybody on the spectrum looks up to Dr. Grandin because she's just done amazing things, So cool. And so getting to introduce her and to get to have this, conversation and lunch with her, and she really, one thing she said that really stuck with me, it's something, and it's part of what I've been trying to get out as an advocate myself, is that don't ever let your disability define who you are. That with me, I'm Temple the scientist, I'm Temple the motivational speaker, but I'm never Temple the autistic. So don't let your disability don't let it define who you are, and that's very much So now in my current role, which I've been in for about a month now, I'm going into my kind of fourth week. As program ambassador, a big part of my job is to help the organization to build a autism resource network across the province. So working with a lot of different organizations and building partnerships really between Autism BC and other organizations. Because while we've worked with with Pacific Autism Family Network and Autism Canada, and we've worked with some other organizations, we know that part of an organization being able to grow, right, and to be able to prosper is to work with a lot of different individuals and advocates and like-minded organizations. So a big part of my job is making those connections and helping to bring collaborative partnerships to Autism BC. And another job, and it's kind of not as important right now because of the pandemic, is to represent the organization publicly as well. But since not a whole lot of people are going out in the public right now, that's kind of put on hold a bit, right? And another part of my role is to help with. I work with the resource team, which is pretty much everybody. We have a pretty small but a mighty staff on Autism BC, and so working with them to help develop new programs and to also to really work towards, how can we make these programs more accessible, not only for people on the spectrum, but for people of all diverse abilities? Because, and also a big part of, what Autism BC has been doing is that they've been trying to connect more with individuals, because for years, Autism BC has been known as a parent-run organization. And so involving more people who are on the spectrum, and I think maybe I was a bit of a start of that. And so I'm definitely helping with with making those connections, because I know that some people might feel a bit more comfortable talking to somebody who's on the spectrum, just because especially if you're somebody who's on the spectrum, it's a bit easier to talk to somebody that's who gets where you're coming from, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so the other part of my job is really to I just help out with whatever projects are being worked on, and one of the things that I'm doing to to build this network and to get us collaborating and partnering with more organizations is I'm in the process of forming a partnerships networking committee, which would basically be held via Zoom at this point, and it would be made up of individuals, family members, and staff from different organizations. And I know you were interested in possibly being involved, and with this committee would basically really focus on, what kind of partnerships do we have already, and how can we further collaborate together as organizations to benefit all of our mandates and the work that we're doing. And to also, figure out, okay, with existing partnerships, how can we make them better? How can we, so that's really something that I'm hoping before the holidays. I know because it's tough right now because who knows with the next wave of the pandemic, how tough the transition is going to be in the next 2 months. But I'm hoping to launch that committee probably sometime in November, hopefully.
Awesome.
And it will really, I think it'll be a really great way to, number one, for organizations that haven't met before and haven't collaborated before, to be able to, have a place to meet and to learn about different organizations' mandates and to develop those kinds of collaborative partnerships. And at the same time, for Autism BC, build that kind of autism resource network,
Very cool. Wow.
Yeah.
It sounds like Autism BC is lucky to have you. It's so cool.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just think that you have such a strong voice and you're just, I just know that you're going to do great things. And we are very happy to be partners with Autism BC and to continue our partnership. Super cool. We're going to be wrapping up soon, but a couple other things I wanted to ask. I know that there's some exciting things coming up with Autism BC. There's the BC Autism Awards and there's a raffle coming up. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So this year we're going to be doing the awards virtually because just obviously we can't have 200 some odd people in a banquet hall this year. So hopefully next year, but we're definitely it's coming along really well. And one of the raffle is actually to win a car. So
oh, cool.
Yeah, so actually so it's a good prize. You're not just so yeah, that's if you want to, I guess if I'm doing a little bit of a plug right now, if you want to kind of learn more about not only the awards but also about the raffle and how to buy tickets, you can go to www.autismbc.com/awards, and it'll take you there for kind of more detailed information just about not only the raffle and everything, just about the awards itself and kind of the history for people who may not be familiar with it. Yeah.
Awesome.
And and I also wanted to I can't say too much about this because we haven't launched it yet, but the Autism BC website, we're going to be relaunching that. We've been developing a new website, so everybody on staff has had a hand in that to make it just to make some changes. So I don't know, I can't give an exact launch date at this point, but we will be we have a new website that's going to be coming out soon. So so stay tuned for that.
Very exciting. That's so great. And for the awards, for the nominations, when is the deadline for that?
The deadline, I believe, is this Friday.
This Friday. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So, and I know, like, everybody within Autism BC, we've been sending emails around to organizations and to individuals saying, hey, nominate people. And the categories are self-advocacy, businesses that have been, the most inclusive, and there's one more I can't think off the top of my head, but I think I think it's a partnerships award.
Cool.
Yeah, but it's it'll be a really great experience. It'll be different than what we've done in the past 2 years, just because of doing it by Zoom or by virtual means. But no, it should be a really great time. So if you can join us, we'd be glad to have you.
Yeah, I'd love to join. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'm going to close up the interview, but I've had such a great time talking with you today, Jake. It's so nice to meet you. We've been emailing, but it's nice to meet face to face. Thank you so much for being a part of this interview. And thank you
so much for having me. Yeah,
no problem. And thanks to you and Autism BC for being such great partners. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. And nice to meet you.
Good to meet you as well. Take care.
Bye.
All the best. Bye-bye.